Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a videocast where we talk with people from all walks of the publishing industry. I'm Christy Stratus, historical suspense and historical fantasy author. And my awesome co-host here, hopefully I'll remember them better than myself, are epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens and science fiction author David M. Kelly. Lurking for
Right.
Legends is an interactive broadcast, and we encourage anyone who happens to be watching us right now to chime in with questions for our guests who will be on in a minute or comment on what you hear in the show. So, before we get started with our guests, what is going on with you guys this week or this past
Uh-oh. I think Christy froze. You okay, Dave?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I think Christy froze, but I'll
I
segue
froze? Am
right
I
in.
back now?
Yeah,
Yes,
you're back
you're
now.
back.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I see
So
my signal isn't great.
it's okay. I was just gonna
Sorry,
segue
guys.
in. What's new with me? Not a lot. I
Yes.
haven't been getting a lot of writing done, but I just wanted to introduce the two guests we're going to have with when we read There's Something About Ernest, or what is the name of that show?
The importance of being
The importance
earnest.
of being earnest. I will never remember that. That's like saying Square Bob Sponge Pants. I'll never get those four words together. But the importance of being earnest is going to feature the three of us, obviously, and JD Estrada will also be chiming in. He's going to be a guest reader, and Maggie Lynn Heron Heidel is also going to be a guest reader. So I just want to introduce those two and give them a bit of starlight or whatever you call it. Anyway, there's nothing much going on with me. I just did a talk to a Brantford writers group. That's a local writers group around where I am, south of Toronto. They invited me to discuss how to run a successful book event and how to do world building in fantasy. So I was there and spoke for about an hour, and had a lot of fun meeting new authors and seeing what their journeys are all about. How about you, Dave?
Great.
For me, well, I'm still in the middle of editing.
Good.
Yeah, I'm actually just halfway through my third pass at the third Logan book, so that should be done in about a couple of weeks, maybe a week, it depends, but somewhere around a week or so. And then it will be going off to my external editor. Still playing through all the red ink and the nasty comments and so on. And other than that, yeah, very harsh this time around, yeah. And other than that, I'm working on the second Hyperion Jones book, which has a title now.
Oh,
It's Hyperion Jones and the Eye of Time.
Ooh.
I hope we're going to be reading from that.
Yes, we should
Well,
yes.
we hope so.
First draft reads.
No.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You heard it here first.
No.
For Legends, the first draft. Yeah, that's a
Nope.
good way to. That's a good way to hone it down and work on it.
Nope. Ain't happening.
By the end, we'll all have read something, and David will be like, I hate it all, I'm burning it.
Yeah. It's, I usually get to that point when I'm editing. It's like by the time I'm finished, it's like I don't even want to see the book again. You know?
Yeah, just
like, yeah, go away. I'm done with you.
Oh my god, I understand that for sure.
How about you,
And
Christy?
how about you, Christy? Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot of writing this week. I just was not feeling it, was not up to it. I took a break. So I did, though, of course, Corrupted Magic. Episode 25 went live regardless. There's always something going live on there anyway, once a week. And this one is called Through Fire. So I don't have a whole lot to talk about this week since I didn't really do a whole lot in terms of writing. But if you check out my Instagram, which is just under my name, Christy_Stratus, because somebody took my name on Instagram and I had to put an underscore. So it's Christy_Stratus. You'll see some pretty cool stuff that I'm doing on there. I'm starting to upload some of the things that I win at auction that I don't really talk too much about. And the last thing I put up, I think, was a vintage phone with a sterling silver cover, and I cleaned it all up, and you can see how amazing it actually looks. It's from I'm not sure if it's the 40s or the 60s because both years are mentioned on there, but anyway, I'm doing some stuff like that. So if you're into that, check me out on Instagram. But hopefully next week I'll have some more news about my writing. So I guess that's about it for me. So now we will introduce our guest, which is very exciting. That's what we're really here for anyway. So tonight we are excited to have with us young adult science fiction author and podcast host George Sirois. How are you, George? It's great to have you here.
Hello, Christy. Hello, David. Hello, Richard. Great to be
George.
here. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So good to have you here. So you have a number of books out. Why don't we just start with you just introducing yourself to us in general?
Okay. My name is George Sirois. I am an author of young adult science fiction. Two of the books are actually on their way. They're in the process of finding new homes. My publisher had actually just recently shut down, but thankfully all the rights have been relinquished back to us. My agent is hard at work trying to find both Excelsior and Ever Upward Part 2 in the Excelsior Journey and New Home. And that's wherever it winds up being, not only will they be there, but once Greater Glory Part 3 in the Excelsior Journey is finished, it will be going there as well. I am also a podcaster. I just finished up episode number 180 of my podcast Excelsior Journeys. It's a weekly interview show that focuses on giving creatives of all types a platform to share their journey to success. And so it's been a lot of fun. I've been doing that for about 4.5 years now. And today is when episode 180 went live, and it was with award-winning author Ann Charles, which is a great, really great time to actually speak with her, since she and I have known each other for 11 years, and it was our first time actually speaking to each other face to face. It was a lot of fun there. I'm also an audiobook narrator. Just finished up the initial recording for the 15th audiobook that I've done so far. And I also have, as just thrown out as an author, I also have a 5-part science fiction and wrestling serial called From Parts Unknown, which is currently available in both paperback and ebook. And eventually, when I get around to it, I will be doing the audiobook for that as well. I plan on doing that as an audiobook / podcast hybrid. So that'll be a lot of fun. But the main thing that's going on right now is yesterday I just directed the first day of rehearsals for Excelsior, the audio drama. The young adult science fiction first part in this trilogy is going to be an audio drama. The cast is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Everyone there is so dialed into it. It's really great. It's been just a true honor to work with these great people. This was being produced through the 529 Club on Clubhouse. So in late February or early March, the 2-part audio drama is going to be on Clubhouse, and so there's a lot going on. I feel like it's almost like it's right by the time I'm finished up with saying what I'm doing, it's like that's all the time we have. Okay, so.
There's so much going on, really exciting times for you. So Excelsior, since last year, that was the 30th anniversary of the character's creation, right?
Yes.
And so how was it adapting that character and the whole, book, I guess, for an audio drama?
It was an amazing challenge. It's still going on, obviously, because when we did our timing for the reading yesterday, what was supposed to be an hour wound up going an hour and 53 minutes. So that's when the executive decision was made by our producer that we're going to break it up into 2 parts. But I still want to do some cutting because there are some parts that just need to be shaved off. It was my first time hearing it for the first time, really, like live, in my ears and everything. So, but it was a tremendous experience, and it's something that I challenge any and all authors to do. I strongly say, like, you gotta adapt at least one of your works to a different medium. and make sure that you have your own limitations. Make sure that you give yourself the sort of things where you only have like an hour to do this story that when you did the audiobook came out to 7 hours.
Mhm.
Now you want to actually you want to condense that whole story into 1 hour, and you really learn a whole lot about doing that. What works, what doesn't. You learn about characters. Can they be smushed together? Can different scenes be cut completely? Playing to a different medium is a real challenge, and it's something that I think a lot of authors would really benefit from doing.
Mm. It sounds, to me, it sounds like nerve-wracking, like a difficult
It is.
process. Yeah,
It
yeah,
can
yeah.
be. It
But,
can be. Yeah.
maybe do you think that your, like, voice talent, the fact that you are voice talent helped you at all, like, develop this into an audio drama? Or does that
Somewhat.
not
Because,
really make
well,
a difference?
actually, no, it did, because by being in that field, it's the same thing as being in the writers community. When you work with you get to speak and network with different writers, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can provide a service to you by doing your audiobook. And then when you're part of the voiceover community and getting to network with them, it's like, oh, you would be awesome in this role. You would be awesome in this role. And just almost starting the casting process before the auditions even begin.
So, going back to your Excelsior series,
Yes.
obviously you've got a new part coming in 3, but I gather that the characters themselves went through quite a few changes before the book was finally released. So,
Oh,
could
yeah.
you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, this whole thing really kind of started when I was in grade school. This is around like 85, 86. And my friends and I, to pass the time, we would come up with um, different fun little, characters that were based on all the different things that we watched growing up. So Star Wars, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Voltron, all the goodies, all Masters of the Universe, Thundercats. I mean, I was growing up in the 80s, and there was a lot to pick and choose from around that time. And so thank you, FCC, for loosening those restrictions and getting all this great content on the air. And so they wound up being the inspiration for our own characters. And these were just characters we would come up with to pass the time. And they were very basic, rudimentary designs. They were just like boxes. It was, in rectangles. It was as good as I can get them. I was never an artist, never claimed to be an artist. And when if you would look at those sketches, you're like, yeah, you're right, you're not one. But I knew that there was something there. And so when I moved away to a different school and then to a different state, I brought all those characters with me, and I kept on picking at them. And then in the summer of 92, when I had to go to summer school, because that was for English, of course, because that's just the way it goes. But it wound up being a blessing in disguise, because I was going through everything, and I was doing much better, obviously, in summer school. I just clicked a lot better with the teacher there. And we got to talking about King Arthur. And she wound up showing us the PG version of the 1981 John Boorman movie Excalibur, which has become one of my favorite movies because it's done so much for me. Because I
It's an
remember
awesome movie.
watching that, and I was just like, oh, it's terrific. I recommend it to anyone. And I just remember watching it, just thinking like, I got to have a character who's like the center of this whole little universe I got going. And he's this legendary character, and he's a god in human form, and he's got to have a sword, definitely has to have a sword. and then it just became like a character that I just started sketching. And I remembered the word Excelsior popped into my mind, because not only is it on the New York State flag, but it was also the starship in Star Trek's 3, 4, and 6. And of course, Stan Lee always used it to end his soapbox with Excelsior, and just so much fun. It was just a word that really clicked with me. So I just called him Excelsior, and it worked. And so I kept on working at him. And he got to a point where I couldn't really draw him as much anymore. So I just started writing about him more than anything. And then kept on picking at him in high school, through the rest of high school, then throughout college. And then just years later, in 2007, I found this tiny little book on the reference writing shelf at a Barnes and Noble in New York City. And it was almost like the actual Holy Grail in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where it's just like a whole bunch of different like amazing chalices, and then there's this one little one that's the right one. And it was a book called No Plot, No Problem, and it was my introduction to National Novel Writing Month. And so it was Chris Beatty's book talking all about it. And I took it home. Something told me, just like, buy this. I took it home and I sped through the first part, and it was all about the history of NaNoWriMo. And it was talking about like what's expected of you, what you can do, and how you break everything down so you can meet your daily goals. And it was just like, yes, like I need to do this. This sounds fantastic. And then I turned to the next page. It's like, okay, here we go, day one. And I closed the book right there. I was just like, this is December. I'm not going to do it right now. And November is not going to work either. It's got to be something else. And I found there was a group for a while based out of New Zealand that did this thing called the Southern Cross Novel Challenge. And it was the exact same thing as National Novel Writing Month, except it was in June. And so I was like, that's what I'll do. I'll do that. That works for a good month. And so on June 30th at 11:35 p.m., I wrote the end on the first draft of what would be the Excelsior novel. And I was under the impression, and this is 2008 now, that all I had to do was just kind of touch it up a little bit here and there, and then it was going to be all set to go out to the world, because the people would be ready for this story. They didn't click with the one I did before from Parts Unknown, but that's its own beast. But like here, 6 years later, I'm a better writer. It's a more universal appeal and everything. This will be great. And I send it over to my dear friend Jerry Ann Geller, who's become my story editor and mentor. And I said, what do you think about this? She read the first chapter and said, this is going to take a lot of work. And we worked for almost 2 years getting it to a point where we believed that it was ready to be. At that point, I decided I was going to go indie. I was going to do the self-publishing route, because if I pitched this to one of the bigger publishers and they take it and it bombed, then I wouldn't be able to do anything else with that series, because I had a trilogy in mind for there. Plus I also had the other characters that had been percolating for even longer. So I knew that they have to have a future too in the book world. So I just kept on working at it and everything. And I decided I was going to do what I called the early bird special, because I wanted to go with this one particular publishing house to get the book and everything all set up and printed and all taken care of. It's called Infinity Publishing. I'm not even sure if they're around anymore, but but based on all of their costs, I put together an early bird special. And I said, if you buy your book now for $17.95, you're not only guaranteeing your own copy signed, but I'm going to put your name in the acknowledgement section in the book. And that brought in all the money to cover all of my setup costs, all the printing costs, and all the shipping costs for everyone who was out of state. And so it wound up being like a big, like not a huge hit, but just like a good enough hit. But then it wound up getting picked up by a small press here in St. Louis. And because my wife and I moved here in 2011, and we, just decided that our money was going to go further here. We were going to have to start a family, and we wanted to be close to some sort of family. And that's where, thankfully, that's where she's from. And we have plenty of family around here, and all those plans and everything are great. So now there is, so now like this other publisher wants to take it. So they took it. It winds up going pretty well for a few years. And then that publisher closed down. And then another publisher was showing interest. And they asked, do you mind doing another round of editing on this? Because I had done editing on all through at this point now, like all of the different versions that had been out. So I just kept on saying, like, I just want it to be the very best it can be. And their editor, who happens to be one of my best friends, took a sledgehammer to it. And I spent another couple of months rewriting it again. And so the 2017 version is the one that is, I can't say out now, because like now it's, that other publisher has since ceased operations. Maybe it's a curse of my book. I don't know, but but I will say that this particular publisher was able to get it set up with a BookBub deal, and it wound up reaching international best-selling status. Didn't reach USA Today. Didn't reach a USA Today list, but it got the international best-selling status. So I can at least take that and run with it. So now, like, who knows what the, if like once it finds a new home, like what the next steps are. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to seeing what it is. So that's the long version of it, from all of its many different iterations. It's gotten quite a history to it.
Yeah, that sounds quite involved. I wanted to go back. I'm right into. I like the audiobooks. I have getting people to narrate my books, and I know that narrators are paid by the finished hour.
Yes.
But how many hours go into a finished hour for you when you're actually doing a job for someone else? And is that different than when you're doing your own book, or is that the same?
It is. I feel like that's a good question, actually, because I am always, I want to put as much into every book, whether it's mine or someone else's. I'm not gonna just try to rush through someone else's just so I can get to my own. So I want to put like the equal emphasis on everything, and there'll be times just going through it when I'll miss some different some different cuts here and there, but thankfully the author is listening. They let me know. I go ahead and make those adjustments, and that's one thing that I always say, is that no matter what, you will get a finished version that will not have any mistakes. So that is what I make sure of. And I ask them, just make sure that, whatever you spot, if I missed anything, let me know and I will make those changes. And if I have to redo a chapter, I'll redo a chapter. But I will do it, because I want that book to succeed, just like I want any book that I'm involved with to succeed.
So people as a whole, or many people, don't kind of like the sound of their own voices.
Yeah.
I'm one of them. And I think it might be kind of like fairly common even amongst writers in general, sort of thing. So I'm kind of intrigued, like how you ended up narrating audiobooks. Did that actually come before the writing, or what?
It's something that I always wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I wanted to get involved in some sort of voice work. And when I was 6 years old, my cousin, who I dedicated Excelsior to, not only to him for the book, but the main character is named Matthew Peters after him, Matthew Peter Henkel. Matthew passed away in 2005, but when he was 2, he dealt with Wilms tumor. It's a cancer of the kidneys that affects children. And so while he was recovering and going through chemo, he had asked his mother if I could basically take all those. You remember those storybooks that would have like a little cassette tape in them, included with them, where they would, just tell like a condensed story of whatever movie is out, for kids. And so I had collected those for all the Star Wars ones at the time. And he asked if I could make copies of those cassette tapes. So I said, I'll do one better. I'll read it. And so I recorded myself reading it instead of the voice of the narrator in the cassettes that went with the storybook. So I just read the storybook, and I did that for all 3 books. And he wound up really enjoying those, and I really enjoyed the process of doing that. And when I was in kindergarten, actually, my preschool teacher had this book out called The Little Valley School Bus, and I still remember my parents waking me up at night and everything just so I can just read a little sample of this story, so that way they can send it over to her and see if I had the right voice for that story. And it turns out I did. So that was like, like either kindergarten or first grade, something around there. But that was when I recorded that little story. I have no idea what happened to that story. From what I recall, like it was just something that she had done on her own. And I don't think it really went anywhere, but it was a cute little story. It's about this little school bus named Bess. But it was my first time doing that. So fast forward many years later, it's 2015, and I had just gotten let go from the job that I was doing. I was doing an admin job at a church. They decided to do some restructuring. My position wound up being eliminated. So I'm sitting at home wondering, what am I going to do next? And I thought I would love to get into voice work. And that's when I watched the documentary that John DiMaggio did called I Know That Voice. And it's a terrific documentary that lifts the curtain and allows you to get a good look and get to meet all of this great talent that was responsible for all these voices of these characters that I would watch growing up, or my parents would watch growing up. And so I remember watching that, just like, that's what I want to do. That's what I really want to do. And I reached out to Twitter. Anyone know of any sort of studio in St. Louis that does voice lessons? And someone reached out to me and said, Clayton Studios in St. Louis, they do a thing called Voice over STL. I called them up, found out what they charged, and it was not in the budget to get that. So I went the same route as the early bird special. When I self-published Excelsior, I did a Kickstarter, and I said, I will narrate 500 words for $10, 1,000 words for $20. And you can take that little MP3 nugget and you can do whatever you want with it. And that raised the money for me to take those lessons. So I took the lessons and really enjoyed it, but I didn't really know like how to really kind of sell myself as a voice actor. And so I reached out to my publisher, who is based out of St. Louis, and I said, do you mind if I read chapter 1 of Excelsior, just so you can see how it sounds? And if you like it, maybe I can do the whole thing. So I did that. And she said, do the whole thing. It sounds great. So I went ahead and got it done. And that wound up being my first audiobook, just doing my own book. And after that, that's when I was reaching, just putting the word out. And since I'm in a writer's community, that allowed me to get some children's books done, a couple of YA books, got those done. And at first I started doing those using the royalty share method on ACX. But after a while, I'm just like, okay, if I'm going to actually make a go of this, then I can't do the royalty share anymore. I got to actually make some money on this. And thankfully, there were people that were willing to pay. And I even have a continuing client who is just fabulous, Ronald R. Van Stockham Jr., who has come up with some of the most imaginative works that I've ever read in my life. And it's been an honor to read them. I've done 6 so far with him and hopefully more in the future. And, I've been able to do historical fiction. I have a biblical epic that's coming up. I have a YA fantasy coming up. I got a nonfiction that's coming up about business. It's wild. It's a really interesting field to be in. And it's something that I just can't believe that there are people that are willing to take a chance on me to bring their books to life. And it's something that I never take for granted.
So it sounds like you narrate more than one book at a time. So you're working with a whole bunch of different authors, obviously. Jorge, I can never say this, but to call him JD. Sorry, George. He says, I'm always fascinated with vocal consistency in narrators, and what are some of the tricks you use to stay consistent? And I think this really goes towards you. If you're doing not just one book, but you're doing several books, like I know when I work with my narrator, when he does like Sidira, and whenever he says he does Sidira's voice, I know it's Sidira because he's very consistent. But I know myself, and when I try to do live reads and stuff, my voice is never consistent, even in the same chapter. So how do you stay consistent? How do you remember all these characters?
It does take a lot. Sometimes I'll go back to it and give myself a little, frame of reference, just kind of click back and see like, how exactly did I do that voice again? A lot of times it's basically just me kind of staying in my lane. I know that there are certain things that I can do, some things I can't do. I don't have the range of a Jim Dale, the guy that did the Harry Potter books, who has this incredible type of catalog of all these different voices. But I'm happy with what I can do, and certain characters really really grabbed my attention. I was really they became something that was a lot of fun to do. There was one that I did a satire for author Dennis Ganal called "Don't Shoot, We Come in Peace." Fabulous book, so much fun to read. And he told me about this one character. It was basically this little this hound dog named Elvis. And every now and then he's got like his thought patterns that he's got talking about. Like he's basically the smartest one in the room. And as I was reading, I was just like, oh, that's Sam Elliott. I gotta do like a Sam Elliott variation on it. I can't do a full on Sam Elliott, but I can at least channel him enough to do it. So those little notes, I'll just go ahead and just, keep an eye, make sure to copy down. So that way I remember them from chapter to chapter.
So put you on the spot. Let's hear Sam Elliott.
Well, basically, he was going to just kind of look around and why you gotta go talk about that man? I really need to just go right over here and just sit back over here. And why is this guy over here in my chair? So like that was my that was just my wasn't trying to full on do Sam Elliott. It was kind of akin to Anthony Hopkins doing Nixon. Just channel him enough to get the idea. So that was what I was going for that.
So Margaret's asking, do you have to grow a mustache to get the Sam Elliott voice down pat?
Thankfully, no, because I tried growing facial hair. I don't look good with it. You can ask my wife; she'll be like, "No." I tried it during COVID, and she was like, "No."
So funny.
Yeah, she's got the final say, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Do you do this full time? It sounds like just a lot of time. I know that audiobooks in general take so much time. You're doing multiples of them and writing. So are you doing this all full time?
The audiobooks are, as of, they've been kind of like a full-time gig for the past few months. And so it's been just, it's been a real joy doing this. And just knowing that, just when it got to a point where I was going to be in this position, it was right around the same time. That's when people were asking, by the way, are you still doing audiobooks? I was like, yes, I am. And all of a sudden, I had some contracts lined up, and that is, that's keeping me going.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it's allowing me to contribute, keep on contributing and, providing for the family. And that's really all I ask. So as long as I can do that, then, doing what I love, then even better.
Ideal. Yeah.
Here's another challenge.
Oh boy.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
Putting him on the spot.
Yep.
Give us a line right out of the movie.
Well, it was basically the Mark Hamill from as the Joker from Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Just can't be too careful with all those weirdos around.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. How on earth do you have time for 2 podcasts while you are doing all this? Please share all of your time warping secrets because we need to know.
Oh yeah, that is basically just just making sure that that I have that all that I can get it all done. Like basically, it's the most interviews that I can get done in one shot, like
Mhm.
one weekend or so.
Mm,
Then
sure.
that's the main thing, because the main time consuming thing more than anything, it's getting the interviews done. And I'll work with my guest schedule and do whatever is necessary to make sure that I can get them on the air. And it's once I get that interview done, then fantastic. Then I can go ahead and just take the time and make sure that everything is edited on my own time. Usually it's like late at night after everyone's gone to bed. That's when I can actually like concentrate and do any sort of editing that needs to be done. So whether it's
Mm.
editing for the chapters or editing for the podcast, especially now that but it makes it easy now with audiobooks, now that I've discovered the wonderful technique known as punch and roll, which is something that all the audiobook narrators do, which is basically editing as you go. So as you go and everything, you make a mistake, then you go ahead and highlight the spot that you're cutting out and go to the punch and roll feature on your audio editing tool, and it will bring it back 8 seconds so that way you can hear it, and then you can pick right back up where you left off. And
Oh,
that's
nice.
made things a whole lot easier, and that's cut down a whole lot of time, because I used to mark my mistakes by just going in the microphone. And
Mm.
turns out that editing is one of the most tedious things you can possibly do. So so having to go through all of those, each chapter by chapter, and getting all those mistakes out, and then listening to it again to make sure you got everything
Mm.
right. It's just like, it's so much easier to just like edit as you go. And that's never really a foolproof thing anyway. You're going to miss some things every now and then, but thankfully, as long as you have your author, listening as they go and making sure that you got everything down, then fantastic. So that way you have that other editor, to work with you.
Mm.
So a question here from JD says, any special thing you do to care for your voice?
Well, when I'm watching sports, I keep my excitement level down. there's that. And I mean, thankfully, being a New York Giants fan, I was dealing with 5 years of utter futility. So there was really not much to really get excited about. Thankfully, they're in the playoffs again, this year for the first time in 6 years. But I'll try to keep that. I try to keep everything kind of tampered down. St. Louis was doing me a favor by not airing their games, so I just kind of was able to just listen to it on Giants.com. But basically, it's just a matter of knowing your limits, drink lots of water, keep yourself hydrated, and don't try to blow out your voice. Do not try to. I've said this in presentations. Do not try to be Chris Latta. Chris Latta was the voice, God rest his soul, was the voice of Cobra Commander and Starscream in Transformers and G.I. Joe. And he had one of the most wonderfully distinctive voices. And the way that he was able to bring that raspiness out, you would think that anyone else would try it and they would be shot. Their voice would be shot for a week. But he was a special talent. So I've said that in presentations that I would do about audiobook narrating, just saying know your limits, play to your strengths, and remember that you are not Chris Latta.
I heard a funny thing on the radio last week. Some DJs are talking about a bunch of different performers like Dolly Parton, and there were a bunch of other famous singers, and they eat potato chips on stage. So while they're performing, you eat potato chips, and apparently it's supposed to do something to the vocal cords to keep them fresh. I don't know if it's the grease that's in them. At first, I thought when they were talking about it, it's the salt.
Yeah, the salt.
But I have no idea what it is. I'm thinking, well, it's bizarre. And they said there are some singers that they'll actually, in a break, when it's just a guitar solo or whatever, they will step back and they will grab a bunch of potato chips that they have sitting on stage and they'll eat them. And it's supposed to do something for the voice. So I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but I thought it was very bizarre.
I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, that it's worth the experiment, that's for sure.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, Sal, Hermit Sal is saying you don't drink tea and honey to soothe your throat, and that is one of those
I did a lot. I did a lot of drinking tea and honey and water with lemon and everything. I was doing a lot of that in November when I got a sinus infection, and that knocked my voice out of commission for a good month. That time was not fun. But once I started to get the feeling back and was able to really get going again, then I would strongly say lemon juice was my friend. I remember when my voice was shot the week that I was doing a show in college, because I studied theater, and I was the fire chief in Eugenie Ionesco's The Bald Soprano, and the fire chief has a monologue that's like almost a page and a half long, that only has one period in it, and so it was just like, just go, just keep on going. And on the week of the performance, I'm doing this with half a voice, but I was, and one of my friends who was working backstage, he said that that they would they were all just like rooting for me to not get flustered, to not lose my place and everything. And all 5 performances didn't miss a single line in all of those. That's one thing I remain very, very proud of.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know how people do that kind of stuff. I couldn't even stand in front of the class and do 3 sentences of Spanish, and you're doing a page and a half monologue. I never understand over and over. I don't know. Yeah. It's amazing.
No,
and then awesome. It was halfway through. It was halfway through. That's when they decided, like, oh, we're going to go with English accents. And thankfully, I knew enough Monty Python to be able to keep up. That was one thing. Like the vocal coach was listening to me, like doing the, speaking along, doing just fine with the, with everything. And every time I was able to keep up with the accent, she was just like, wow, you're good. And I was like, I watched Monty Python when I was growing up. He's like, well, it worked.
There's nothing difficult about a British accent, though, is
there? No.
Okay, Dave.
So Salvador is asking, George, have you ever attempted to do different types of voices like Mel Blanc?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, in Clubhouse last year, in 2021, I took part in this in a special voiceover challenge where the winner would get an agent for a year, would sign with a voiceover agent, and I made the semifinals based on the presentation that I did, and I was throwing out. I was doing like I did it as like a whole bunch of different characters that were all like waiting to be served at a restaurant, and so I had Vito Corleone, asking why he wasn't on the guest list. I had Master Shake and Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force complaining that they didn't have food yet. I had both Mark Hamill Joker and Heath Ledger Joker sitting together. The whole thing was a lot of fun. It was a really fun presentation. At some point, I got to find that script.
That'd be neat to hear.
Yeah.
So we're getting near the end of our show here, and I want to just ask you before we sign off. So you're doing audio gigs now. Obviously, are you still looking for more audio? So how do people reach out to you to hire for your audio? Just go to your website.
You can go to www.he'sgotit.com, as in by George He's Got It. I'm in the process of updating the website right now with I think I have the fiction and nonfiction reels up, as well as a commercial reel. I have an older animation reel that I'm going to put back up there as well. And if you would like to email me directly, by all means, please do. Just go to george@he'sgotit.com and just let me know if you have any questions about it. I'm also doing mentoring for those who want to get into it, for those who want to get into podcasting. I am, willing to work with them as well.
All right. And so what's next for George Sirois?
Next is the Excelsior audio drama. That and quite a bit of cutting of that audio drama to try to get it into an hour and a half. So right now, like I said, it's the first reading came out to an hour and 53 minutes. So I get to bring it down to an hour and a half. So I think 2 45-minute episodes with a good solid cliffhanger, right at the end of part 1, and then going from there.
And you got a hard release date for that, or just
right? It's early March, but if you reach out to me and just ask to, if you want to follow me, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. Just go to at George Sirois. For those, you can find me on Facebook. You can find the Excelsior Journeys podcast there as well. I have a group there, Excelsior Journeys Behind the Scenes. And just keeping up with doing my best to really kind of keep up. Just now that things are, I would say, like kind of gearing up the way that they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And finally, obviously we see it on your website, but where else can people buy your books?
Well, you can buy From Parts Unknown, which was I briefly mentioned. It's a 5-part science fiction and wrestling serial. The omnibus edition, I have a couple of copies left myself on my site. You can go to the store right over there to get it. But if you want, you can also get it through Amazon or any of the other book retailers, and you can get the ebook there as well.
All right, that's awesome. Well, thanks again, George, for joining us today. We really enjoyed listening to you, and it's amazing that you, like Christy said earlier, I don't know how you have time to do all that stuff. I barely have time to write, and you're doing we do a podcast, you do 3 in come February, and then you do your narrating and everything else that you're doing. That's amazing. So congratulations to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. And just a quick shout out to a friend that I do a lot of live streaming with, the horror host Ivana Cadaver. Not a real name, but she is a great friend. We just and quite a few people that are listening here are friends that I've made through her. So you can find us on the occasional live stream as well. So thank you to all of you thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's been our pleasure, George. So next week's guest is Canadian author Miranda O. Miranda has written a hit series called Chin Up, Tits Out, hitting all the tough stuff on love, romance, and dating. As a natural storyteller and high-energy person, she loves to challenge the dark thoughts we think naturally as humans, digging deep to find the positivity and silver lining in everything we go through in life. So whether it is death, illness, or injury, or heartbreak, or a loss of a job, etc., you name it, no topic is off limits for Miranda O. So sounds like a very interesting one next week. I think it's going to be totally different than anything we've done. So I look forward to speaking with Miranda. So for Christy, Dave, George, and myself, we wish everyone a safe and happy week ahead. Until we meet again, take good care.